If you were tuning in last week, you heard me talk a lot about feet and their important function in our daily lives. And I dove in just a little bit on runners and how they can get started retraining their feet to help their stride. Well, today I'd like to go a few steps deeper and help runners figure out what are the next things I can do to really economize my stride and build resiliency in my gait. Every time you push off the ground, your big toe is the final point of contact. It provides leverage. A stiff or weak big toe means less efficient push-off, poor foot mechanics, and added strain on the ankle, knee, and even the hip. If your big toe can't extend properly, ideally 60 to 75 degrees, your body has to compensate. That can lead to problems like plantar fasciitis, Achilles issues, shin splints, or even bunions. When the first MTP can't dorsiflex adequately, whether due to stiffness, pain, or poor motor control, runners often shift load laterally or offload the big toe. This changes plantar pressure, reduces push-off power, and has been linked with conditions like plantar fasciitis and altered gait pattern. Let's do a quick self-check. When you're standing, try to lift only your big toe while keeping the others down. Can you do it smoothly? Now, try passive dorsiflexion. You should have substantial motion during a functional test, like walking or running. If you see compensation, like ankle rolling or foot abduction, or even reduced forward pressure, that is definitely a yellow flag. Think of it like this. A floppy lever is inefficient and loses energy. A stiff lever is able to translate force into the ground. That's why it's so important for the big toe to be able to flex and absorb force so that it can translate that force up through your leg for a more efficient stride. The first piece of making sure you have adequate big toe function is making sure the mobility is there in the first place. So the simplest thing to do in this position here is to do some basic stretching, getting that big toe up to a point where it feels like there's a pull across the joint here and maybe even under the arch of your foot. And if you notice, my foot is about a 90-degree angle to my shin. This takes the slack off of some of the tissues that are traveling to the big toe. Hold this for about 30 seconds, then release, repeat 2 or 3 times. If that last one feels too easy, kneel with your toes tucked underneath you. This is not for people with really stiff big toes, first of all. You got to go through the first step. Kneel with your toes tucked underneath you, and then gently sit your weight back onto your heels. Same deal. Sit here for 20 to 30 seconds, making sure that pressure is spread across your foot or across your toes, and then repeat 2 or 3 times. In regards to strength, we talked about the short foot exercise last week. This week, I want to talk about specific big toe strengthening. Take a light band, put it around just the big toe, create enough tension to bring the big toe off the floor. Then, without curling your lateral toes, press your big toe into the floor, and then slowly release. Lather, rinse, repeat, making sure that you keep those little toes uninvolved. Start with 3 sets of 6 to 8 reps, and if that feels too easy, then go up, capping that strength at 12 to 15 reps. So far we've talked about mobility, we've talked about neuromuscular control, we've talked about strength. Now it's time to put all of those pieces together into load transfer. Let's develop some skills so that this can actually translate to our athletic activity. So lots of different ways to do this. Thing number 1 that I love, especially for runners, again, taking a light band, placing it just under the ball of the big toe. We're next to a step because we're going to bring that left side through. We're working on the right big toe right now. And all I'm going to do is hold that band down underneath my right big toe. As I come up into a calf raise, I'm not going very high, maybe an inch or 2 off the floor. And I'm just nice and fluidly going up and down. This forces that load transfer into my big toe and really helps me distribute the load across my entire foot. The next load transfer drill that I really love for runners is doing a single leg deadlift with that band in the same position. So we're going to leave that band underneath the ball of the big toe. I'm going to make sure I've still got it here. Again, we're training that right big toe. I'm going to get some good tension on this band. This is the lightest one we've got. I'm going to go through a single leg deadlift. As I push through, I have to work harder to keep that band attached beneath my foot. And as I release, that tension gets easier to maintain. My foot is on fire right now, trying to keep this band positioned underneath my foot. We take those two skills and we transition them into things like hopping, skipping, bounding, and any sort of the types of training that we do in here. Once we're able to confidently include those skills and drills into the program, the athlete's going to have a much better feel underneath their foot for that load transfer through their big toe. And over time, their stride becomes more economical because they're using their whole foot and that stiff, efficient lever set by the big toe. So, clinically and biomechanically, the big toe isn't just some random appendage on the end of your foot. It helps stiffen the foot, wind up the plantar fascia, and produce a really stiff, efficient lever for propulsion. Keeping it mobile and strong improves push-off efficiency and limits compensations that might lead to injury.